Do you think Chef Gordon Ramsay might have been able to show up and help pull this guy's head out of his buttocks? I don't know. This guy was probably just as grumpy as Gordon Ramsay.
Gonzo, the Coast Guard years, Key West, Episode 3, first day on the job.
So the next morning comes. It's Tuesday morning. I don't remember if it was Rob or Rubiano, but again, I'm pretty sure it was Rubiano. Stopped by the room and we walked across the street towards the admin building where the chow hall was. And I remember we get there and I get in line for the chow hall and I just had flashbacks to fucking boot camp all over again. I mean, you got these trays with the little slots cut into them or molded into them or whatever. And I'm just like, God, here we go again. Now, behind the counter, the guy slinging food onto your trays was a cook, petty officer, third class, so-and-so. You know, the weird thing is most cooks in the Coast Guard, I never did this so much, but a lot of folks would call them cookie. I don't know why. I mean, it's a real shame that they actually were calling these people cookie because I'm telling you, it was like false advertisement because none of these people even remotely resembled the very delicious oatmeal raisin cookie. Not at all. No, it's just, I know that's weird. I wish they just had a different name for them. I actually never knew this cook's name. What I do remember about him was he was a complete ass. I remember standing in line my very first time going there, which was the evening meal the night before, I think. And he just started barking at me. And he was grouchy and barking not like the small guy out at Duval Street, mind you. He's just yelling at me, asking me, was I supposed to be there? And where was I working? And I'm like, yeah, I'm assigned to the barracks. And I'm just thinking, would I willingly come here for a meal to put up with his attitude and his mediocre food? No, not at all. I mean, he was so stupid, or I should just say grouchy. Well, not stupid, grouchy. I mean, I wonder, do you think Chef Gordon Ramsay might have been able to show up and help pull this guy's head out of his buttocks? I don't know. This guy was probably just as grumpy as Gordon Ramsay. Don't get me wrong. I like Gordon Ramsay. He's awesome. Anyway, I did my best to avoid this guy at all costs. I mean, the only time I think I saw him ever was at the chow hall, which was probably really good because I think they snuck him out the back, actually, and never actually let him walk out amongst the regular people because he was a bit of a dick. Anyway. Just had to go with the flow, I suppose. Wasn't much else I could do at that point because I really didn't know much of anything. We eventually get our food. I'm sitting down and I'm inhaling my food like a madman. And I sort of remember Rubiano telling me to slow the fuck down because, well, I didn't need to eat so fast. And the reason I didn't need to eat so fast was because I wasn't in boot camp anymore. Now, I heard that a lot. Hey, dude, blah, 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 blah. You're not in boot camp anymore. Man, I got tired of being reminded about that. But they were right. They were always right. Slow the fuck down, dude. Don't do this. You're not in boot camp anymore. Calm down, dude. It's all right. It was getting close to 7:30, and so we needed to hurry up and finish. So we ate our food, and we took the trays over to the scullery. The scullery is essentially a place where you wash dishes. So yeah, scullery. We dropped our stuff off there and then we headed off across the street between the admin chow hall building and the barracks. And let me tell you, the street was like hardly ever traffic. There was like hardly any cars on it. It actually dead ended at a parking lot. But it was so few cars or people on that road that you could probably play jacks on it, finish your entire game or 10 before a car or something came by. And if you don't know what the game jacks is, then I'm just way too old and not going to explain it to you. I'd also figured out, or rather, I think I was informed that I could wear a short sleeve shirt. I was no longer wearing my long sleeve shirts because, Key West, Florida is always in tropical dress. The uniforms we had for this particular day was your standard Coast Guard working blues. So that was a dark blue button-down shirt, matching dark blue polyester cotton blend pants, black boondockers, black socks. They even issued me a black hat. I think it was a black hat or some shade of black or blue. I don't remember. But it said USCG Group Key West across the top. U.S. Coast Guard Group Key West. Pretty sure I have that thing somewhere still stashed around, just not exactly sure where it is. We walked back into the barracks. It's the place I was the very first day I showed up, and it's a typical looking motel lobby situation. When you walked in the front, there were two couches off to the left on opposite sides of a wall, a TV on the third wall over there. And in the middle of that, it was a coffee table with the requisite number of random scattered magazines all over it. The TV was always set to CNN during the day. The chief warrant officer who was in charge of the barracks as a whole liked to watch the stock ticker that went across the bottom. I'll admit at 19 years old, I had no clue what a stock ticker was. I know that there were a bunch of weird letters and numbers going across the bottom of the television, but I had no idea what any of that meant. So in the lobby as well, there was also like the lobby desk, or more like a reception desk. And behind that desk was, there were two rooms that I remember. It was the office for the chief warrant officer and another room that had a set of bunk beds in it and a bathroom and shower. I'd later find out what that was for. And also behind this desk was Petty Officer Jalapeno and his posse of people. He introduced me to the ones that were there. One of them was a blonde dude. He was a E3, a full seaman, not an E2 seaman apprentice like I was. I mean, this blonde dude, this E3, I don't remember a lot about him, but there's a couple of things I do know. One of them, that's probably the most significant one, is like he didn't do anything. I don't remember him ever doing a thing, except for he was kissing Jalapeno's ass all the time, and maybe he was doing something else behind that desk when no one was watching. I don't know. He never did a thing. Okay, so that's not true. If you ever had like an idea to improve on something, he would always argue against you. He'd always be contradictory to anything that anyone else had to say if it didn't come from Petty Officer Jalapeno. Now, if Jalapeno changed his mind despite what, Seaman Blonde was saying, then he would jump on Jalapeno's bandwagon. Oh, yeah, I think it's a great idea. Boats, and they called them boats a lot. Anyway, don't get me started. Anyway, he always pissed me off. I mean, the dude did nothing. He was pretty forgetful, generally speaking. If I had to sum him up, it was sort of like a long list of adjectives and adverbs and stuff. He was just a pole-smoking, ass-kissing jackwagon. Anyway, Jalapeno also introduced me to another blonde dude. This was Seaman Apprentice Brooklyn. He also said, oh, and you know Rob Diamond, and then he had officially introduced me to the chief warrant officer that was there. In addition to those people, there was also a chief petty officer who was the direct supervisor to Jalapeno. The chief wasn't there. He was on another part of the base doing some work related to the SESs. I don't know what he did. I just know he was the chief over there. I don't even remember this guy's name. Except I was told, and it was obvious from his appearance, that before he got to Key West, Florida, he had also spent time in Cape May as a company commander. I'm like, holy shit. I just got out of boot camp. Can I not get away from these fuckers? I'm like, damn it. I didn't even know. At that point, I kind of thought that was like the norm. You go to a place, there's a former company commander there to keep the boots in line or whatever. Anyway, I didn't deal with him so much, but the one thing I did know is that whenever he was around, Jalapeno was around, and Jalapeno spent all of his time kissing the chief's ass almost as much as Seaman Blonde was kissing Jalapeno's ass. Believe me, it worked out pretty good for Jalapeno, all that ass kissing he did. I mean, it definitely sorted him out and worked in his favor a few months down the road. So after chatting a little bit and sort of standard morning BS, Jalapeno sort of handed out our duties, and he had told Brooklyn and I that we are going to be canvassing the base. Not even sure what that meant at the time. Actually, I know I didn't have a clue what that meant. So when we were about to take off, Brooklyn goes behind the desk, grabs some of those large sort of leaf trash bags, the kind you use to bag leaves at your house. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not liking what I'm seeing here, but whatever. Brooklyn says, come on. We walk back out the front door, and he hands me a bag. He reaches down and picks up a scrap piece of paper off the ground. And then I'm like, oh my God, you are fucking kidding me. We're picking up trash like a fucking prison chain gang. I'm like, holy shit. If I wanted to pick up trash, and I would have stayed home back in Virginia. I mean, come on. I picked up trash around the yard. Not that we had a lot of trash, but we picked up sticks and leaves, and basically normal yard sort of maintenance. The difference here, though, was that I was getting paid to pick up trash. And we picked up palm leaves and picked up anything that didn't look like it actually belonged on the ground. So yeah, that's what I was doing. That was my first official task in the U.S. Coast Guard, was walking around the Group Key West base, picking up trash that had blown around, palm leaves and whatnot. I will say this for Jalapeno. He put me with Seaman Apprentice Brooklyn, which was kind of a good, it actually worked out pretty good. Brooklyn was just, he was a good guy. He was a bit of a goofy dude, had a great sense of humor, and he was a big, huge lover of heavy metal music. Now, I wasn't a fan of heavy metal music then, but I didn't care. I mean, I learned to love it. And so, speaking of heavy metal, so my roommate, Dave Trombone, he was a big time fan of that big hair metal band Dokken. I never got into Dokken, but that was his thing. Anyway, so Brooklyn spent some time telling me about his family back in Brooklyn, where he grew up in Brooklyn, or I think it was Brooklyn where he grew up. And he was glad that I finally showed up, because before I got there, he was the boot. He was the brand new boot. He'd only been there for like a month or so before I got there. So he was happy that there was somebody else for them to pick on. Thankfully, though, he went out of his way to make me feel welcome. He didn't actually treat me like shit at all. I mean, it's not that he didn't make fun of me, because he did, but he was a few months older than I was. So, I mean, I think we graduated the same year from high school. So at least we are on the same maturity level, so much as that. He told me a little bit more about Rubiano, too, and why folks just seem to shun Rubiano. Jalapeno and the chief, by the way, not only was he a former company commander, but he was also a competitive bodybuilder. He had actually competed in a competition while I was there, and apparently, from what I recall, he won second place in Fort Lauderdale in the light heavyweight division. He was a big dude. Anyway, so the chief and Serrano didn't get along with him at all, because Rubiano couldn't or wouldn't get underway, and was claiming that he had chronic seasickness. Now, in the Coast Guard, if you're a bosun's mate like the chief and Jalapeno are, you will eventually end up on a ship or on a small boat because that's what you're there for. And that's your job entails going out to sea at some point. Now, for them, going out to sea is part of their job. And if you can't go out to sea, I can see why they would not be a fan of yours. And let's face it, the Coast Guard is a seagoing service. Although there are jobs that don't require you to go out to sea, it is a seagoing service. So if you can't get underway, you really shouldn't be in the Coast Guard. I mean, that's just how it is, right? So anyway, Rubiano was definitely not a favorite of the chief and petty officer Jalapeno. Everyone else sort of like, hey, it's Rubiano. He's another dude. I mean, he's getting out soon. So they knew he was getting out. So he had a short-timer's attitude, or they always assumed he had a short-timer's attitude. So he kind of got ignored quite a bit. Anyway, the moral of the story is my second day in Group Key West, Florida, the first day that I actually was giving an official task by the U.S. Coast Guard, and that official task was picking up trash. I'm still kind of baffled still how I ended up at starting this whole thing in the Coast Guard, boot camp, getting to Key West. I'm still not clear at this point how I ended up here. I mean, that super cool, surreal feeling that I had the day before was gone. I mean, it was like a slap in the face. The reality of what was happening to me in the Coast Guard was right there in front of me. It was like a truck. It just, broadsided me when I wasn't paying attention. I mean, my first job was picking up trash. Dead palm leaves. What? I was on litter patrol. What can I say? Just welcome to the U.S. motherfucking Coast Guard.
You've been listening to Gonzo the Coast Guardiers Key West, written and produced by Tim Gonzalez, and I'm Nicholas Gonzalez, the voice guy. Join us next week for another episode of Gonzo the Coast Guardiers.